Okay, well, good morning, good day, and good evening to everyone who has joined us for another episode of Hair Talks. My name is Dr. Thanuj Nakra. I'm an oculofacial plastic surgeon in Austin, in the United States, and I'm one of the co-founders of Global Cosmetic Surgery, which is a platform that is hosting Hair Talks today. Joined with us today is also Dr. Deborah Shom, one of my co-founders of Global Cosmetic Surgery. And I'll speak just for a moment about Global Cosmetic Surgery, introduce this Hair Talks episode, and then we'll get the show on the road here. So Global Cosmetic Surgery was founded in the midst of the pandemic, when we were all seeking for opportunities to connect globally, and it turned into a phenomenon where we had numerous wonderfully attended sessions every few months during the pandemic. We talked about surgery, we talked about aesthetics, lots of topics in between, and we created a momentum that we feel proud to continue even post-pandemic. There is a role here for online free webinars, and this is a global stage to bring the best minds of aesthetics to your own living rooms, wherever you are. And so we're proud to continue doing it. And Hair Talks is a series of lectures that started this past summer, where we focus on all areas of trichology. And today, we're very excited to have Dr. Andy Goren as our keynote speaker for today's episode of Hair Talks. Dr. Michael Gold, I'll also introduce him. Dr. Gold has been a friend and active colleague with Global Cosmetic Surgery, helping us to coordinate some of the best minds onto the screen here. So we thank Dr. Gold for being a key member of our Global Cosmetic Surgery team. Dr. Gold's in Nashville. He's on the faculty of Vanderbilt University. He's the founder of Gold Skincare Center. He's written over 200 articles on dermatology and aesthetics, and he really has worldwide recognition. He's on the executive committee of various important dermatologic and hair societies. Thank you, Dr. Gold, for your continued collaboration. And just a couple of words about Dr. Goren, who's our keynote speaker. He's based in Europe, but he travels all over because he is that wanted professionally and commercially. He's famous for many things, including developing clinical genetic tests for alopecia and also epigenetic marker discovery in alopecia. His minoxidil response test is something that I think everyone's familiar with. So Dr. Goren, we're very excited to have you here with us. And wanted to also briefly also introduce our three esteemed colleagues who are joining us as moderators for the Q&A session that'll immediately follow the keynote speech. So we have Vikram Bhatt, who's the founder of Enrich Salons, which is one of India's largest groups. Thank you, thank you, Mr. Bhatt. We have Sahil Gupta, who's the CEO of Bodycraft, one of India's largest integrated salon and clinic chains. Hello, Mr. Gupta. Thank you for joining us. And then we have Sridhar Ranganathan, who's the former medical director of Allergan, a great mind, and now the co-founder of Halexon. Thank you for joining us. So now I'll hand over the stage to Dr. Michael Gold, who's our chief moderator. We'll love to hear from you, Michael, and your introduction for Dr. Goren.
Thank you, Tanuj, and thank you everybody for being here today. We've got a great session set for you. This is a series of talks, as Tanuj said, that we're covering various aspects of the hair world. Hair is a very big topic, as in all different facets of medicine, but dermatology is a big deal for us with hair. So we're going to talk about global market trends for hair regrowth strategies and strategies to scale up your practice. And I asked my good friend Andy Goren to be our keynote today. And I know Tanuj mentioned a little, but I'm going to sort of read a little more. So he's been at it a long time in the hair world. As noted, many firsts in dermatology. So Andy developed the first clinical genetic test for predicting androgenetic alopecia, the first discoverer of epigenetic markers predicting anti-androgen therapy response in female androgenetic alopecia. Also developed the first to develop a clinical acne vulgaris antibiotic response. And he's been involved in the development, commercialization, and listing of several drugs and medical devices to use in not only female pattern hair loss, but chemotherapy-induced alopecia, excessive hair shedding, female sexual dysfunction, and now is working on dermatologic therapies based on genetically modified organisms. So even though he's coming to us from California, he spends most of his time doing his work, a lot of work in Europe. He's published many studies on the hair world. And so without further ado, it's my honor to have him here. A great pleasure to see him virtually today, but I'm going to turn it over to Andy to talk on the future of alopecia treatment.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here today. And thank you, Michael, for this great introduction. I think Michael and I share one of the things that we've been in many congresses together, most wonderful ones that he have organized. And I think over the years, we've seen that there was, in the beginning, quite little interest, maybe 10, 15 years ago in hair. And it's sort of exploded now to be a major topic in any Congress that we go to. It's just amazing to me how it changed. But with that also, we kind of hope that there are new treatments coming, not just a lot of people talking about the old treatments. And I think that's kind of what I was going to open today and talk about. There's a bright future for hair loss. And I'm going to share my slides here. Beyond the idea that there's a lot of interest, it also goes with, can you see my slide? Yeah.
Yes.
Beyond the interest that we see nowadays in the industry, and even within the residency programs in hair, and even some pharmaceutical industry, we want to know what does really the future hold and what are the new interesting developments. And I think you'll hear a lot of it today, but I'll just open with some small observation that I made about the future of hair loss. I'm a full professor of dermatology in Rome, and then I spend most of that time between Prague and Rome, and sometimes in the US as well. So in the past, we were hairy. I think we kind of agree about that. Of course, we don't have so much evidence except ideas of what we find. Most of it is fossilized, but we think we were quite hairy in the past. And we believe that the purpose of hairing was thermal regulation. We think so. Touch transduction, as well as eye protection. Social signaling, as well as sometimes in a way to avoid insect bites, colds, radiation. So these are the things in the past why we think we were very hairy. But as we know through evolution, we kind of lost our hairs, and we can look at some of our ancestors that we know still exist today in the great apes, and it seems to still be a lot more hairy than we are. So why did this evolutionary adaptation occur? We don't know for sure, but there are a whole bunch of theories, whether we had to move to savannas after there were a lot of forests that were lost. Maybe it was lice. Another theory is about facial emotions. As we started to express some of our ideas and some of our communications with our species, some of it you required emotions of the face, and hair didn't apply with that. But so we lost some of this hair, and so we had to somehow adapt to our climate. And one way we do it now is heating, air conditioning. So at the end, we need less and less hair, actually, if you think about it, because we control our environment and what hair was originally for, which is probably mostly thermal regulation. Well, we don't need much of it. So it's kind of funny if we think about it. Where were we? We were hairy, but we don't like body hair today as human beings socially. We also must have hair on our head. And it's not accepted when it happens naturally. It's just because it's a sign of aging. But when we shave our head like this, it's considered sexy. So it's very confusing, actually, if you think about it. What really socially is acceptable and what not acceptable? What are the actual ramifications of being bald? So the answer, purely from an evolutionary point of view, is we're heading for full baldness because there's actually no advantage for us to have hair today. Hair, if you're thinking about from heat transduction, heat protection, and all these other things we're talking about, even if it's against all sorts of like mosquitoes and lice, it's not so actually relevant to us anymore today because we control a lot of our environment. So that's really the future of hair loss, is baldness. So an interesting thing that we published, my group, I think it was in 2017, is that social selection favors offspring prone to the development of a genetic alopecia. And we thought it was a very interesting idea that we came up about. First of all, if you do, I think majority of people are in dermatology, you'll find out there's increased incidence of aging in younger population. And it's really interesting. Why are younger people actually experiencing AGA? So one of the things that, and I think it was mentioned earlier, I was the original guy who found a link in the CAG repeat and the androgen receptor on the X chromosome and the predictor of AGA in men. In women, it's a little bit more complicated. But in the same genetic variation in women is associated with late ovulation, which actually allows women, it makes it more difficult for them. It's more related to PCOS. So there are some studies that demonstrated PCOS actually it does not allow, it does not interfere as much with fertility as the timing of fertility. So it allows for later ovulation in life and conceiving later in life, but maybe with more difficulty. And if you take that in mind, what you really think of now with social pressure that we have, most women don't have kids at the age of 20. Most of them opt for 30 and even later. Well, but the women who can actually bear children at the later age are probably the ones that have the shorter CAG, which disposes their offspring to actually have AGA. So keeping that in mind, in the future, probably, as we actually have just socially get married later and have children at the later age, the women who can actually bear children at the later age are probably the ones that are going to have offsprings that are likely to be more of the phenotype of bald. So I know this is not what you wanted to hear about the future of hair loss, but really that's what's happening, I think, both on a social level, on a genetic selection level, and also on our environmental level, how we actually control our environment. So at the end, we are going to be bald, and maybe in the future also, it'll be more acceptable because this is how all human beings will look as a species. But until then, we have a few interesting things that I just wanted to mention. So one of it is around chemotherapy-induced alopecia. And I'm just going to go through a few different ideas and projects. Some of them I've been involved with, and just I think they're interesting kind of point of reference to the future of hair loss. So there are quite a few people, as you know, that suffer from chemotherapy-induced alopecia. There's 650,000 in the United States alone, cancer patients. This is a very common adverse event. And in fact, there are quite a few women who decide that they don't, more than men, that decide they do not want to go through chemotherapy, which is life-saving, just because they don't want to lose their hair. So in order to overcome this, there are a couple of inventions out there. And the one that was approved actually by FDA before, and it is actually available, is a device that cools the scalp. And this scalp cooling device, it causes vasoconstriction. And in theory, what happens is it reduces the alpha wave of the chemotherapeutic agent to go into the hair follicle. By doing that, it reduces the amount of hair fall. And this actually does work fairly well. It's not perfect, but it does work fairly well. The problem with the device is cold intolerance. It's extremely cold on the scalp, even though they reduce the temperature slowly. And the bigger problem is, from an administrative point of view, is that it requires quite a lot of time in the chair, and most chemotherapy units don't have enough chairs to give patients to wait so long for it. So it would be great if there was some sort of topical cream or something that we can apply to these patients before the chemotherapeutic session and see if they can reduce less hair. So one idea that we had is and I was involved in this, is developing an alpha-1 androgenic receptor agonist where it actually contracts the smooth muscle. It mimics exactly the same thing as what happened with the cooling. And so we have done several studies on that, and I won't get to all of that, but here's an example of a before and after with the patient and a placebo, which cream that we use in this cream, which is kind of expected after a few weeks and a few sessions of chemotherapy. And this is one with the actin. The active is just phenylephrine, which is an alpha-1 agonist. But you can see there's quite significant, we had quite a big series of patients that we have done this way, but there's quite a significant improvement as a prophylactic in hair reduction. And here's another patient with the active. So this is a very interesting development. I think you'll see more in chemotherapy-induced alopecia because there is quite a lot of patients in that, quite a lot of need in that. The market is something that there's really no good solution for patients. So I think this is one area that we will definitely see additional drugs, additional products to target. And it's not just hair when we think about chemotherapy. There's quite a few other adverse events. Skin is another one, nails. So this is an area of active research, I think, by quite a few groups. Of course, female pattern hair loss and male pattern hair loss. And I'll touch for a second about female pattern hair loss. Minoxidil currently is the only drug approved for female pattern hair loss. Unfortunately, it's a drug that doesn't work very well on majority of women. Only 30 to 40% of women respond. So I will touch really briefly on the project that I worked on, and I have no commercial interest at this point, but we discovered the mechanism of action of minoxidil being, we isolated the iso enzyme called sulfur transferase 1A1 that's responsible for the activation of minoxidil. Minoxidil by itself is actually not a drug, it's a prodrug. And the way to activate it, it requires an enzyme in our body, and specifically in the outer root sheath of keratinocytes. So we developed a diagnostic test that we can actually rule out who's going to respond or non-respond with almost 98% accuracy. So this is a very interesting thing because we don't have as many times in dermatology today products that actually diagnose to treat. So in a lot of fields you find, especially if you look at oncology, you do a diagnostic to treatment. Even in diabetes, we try to do that. Most of metabolic syndrome, neurological diseases. And so there's something in dermatology to think about is how do we diagnose to treat rather than, okay, well, let's just put a steroid on a patient. So I worked quite a few years in projects and diagnostic, and I think that now it's a good opportunity to start really thinking as we get more and more drugs available and more treatments. If we think about women, we can use bicalutamide. We can use it depends, of course, on the disease. We use minoxidil. Sometimes we use finasteride in those women. Betamethasone combination of bicalutamide. I've heard all sorts of stuff that people use, even Botox, which I'm not sure that it works. But it would be really a great way for a physician to be able to understand first what is the diagnose to treat pathway. So I think that's one interesting thing. Another thing that I will talk about briefly here is that we were engaged, and we still are, is that the women who have the low enzymatic activity, which is this enzymatic test that determines if you respond to minoxidil, have the ability to actually increase this enzyme. And some of the research that I did led to one commercial product that's available for doing that. And I think you'll see some more follow-on products, even supplements that you'll be able to take to increase the enzyme in your body. And by increasing your enzyme, you'll be able to improve the minoxidil response. So even though women, some of them don't respond to topical minoxidil or oral minoxidil, which is a separate subject, a whole different discussion. But also a lot of women don't respond to oral minoxidil. There will be ways to sort of boost it or increase that. I will not get into all this. This is the same, but this is some example of studies we did with women. Another thing that we hear a lot, and probably more than any hair loss, is really telogen effluvium and just hair shedding. So we published several papers on this, and I think this is an area of extreme interest by a lot of groups because this could be the prelude to female pattern hair loss or male pattern hair loss, and it's an area that's extremely sensitive to most patients. Is they shed a lot. And we all know we all shed a lot, but you know, what does it mean when you ask a woman, do you shed a lot? Like 99% of women will tell you, oh yeah, I shed every time I go to the shower. But one of our colleagues, Rodney Sinclair, defined this shedding scale, a visual analog shedding scale. And what they do is a 1 to 6 scales. And what 1 to 4 is about normal shedding. And what we call normal shedding is based on the average amount of human hairs between the anagen and telogen phase. But 5 or 6 is excessive shedding. And what we find is that among the women that are excessive shedders, 60% of them are going to develop AGA of some sort. And the other thing that our study did, we did a study on 300 patients, we found that 40% of the women that don't have female pattern hair loss, they excessively shed when they wash their hair. So this is actually a very interesting thing. So when you ask women, you go to a class, you go to an event, and you say, okay, how many of you are shedding a lot in the shower? Of course, you probably get 100% of them saying, oh yeah, because every woman always thinks she sheds too much. But really, out of the women who don't have female pattern hair loss, and they don't really have any disease that we can see, it's really just a telogen effluvium of some sort. 40% of them are excessive shedders. So it's a pretty striking amount of women that really suffer from excessive shedding. So one of the things that occurred to me, and this was an idea that we developed, and again, I don't have any commercial interest in it, but I used to work on this project, is how do we solve this excessive shedding? And I was thinking about glue at the time. How do you glue the hair to the scalp? And I know it sounds crazy, but I had a few glasses of wine when I was doing that, so that kind of led to crazy idea. But one of the things that at the time I was thinking, every hair not in our body, but in our scalp is connected to a muscle, the erector pili muscle. Now, it's not true of our body. For example, in the beard, there's no expression of erector pili muscle. But the erector pili muscle, as we know, when it contracts, it actually pulls the hair proximal. And it's harder to pull the hair. In fact, my group proved it, that if we apply an alpha-1 agonist, it's a smooth muscle, to the hair, it contracts the hair and it holds it tighter. And you can think about it at the same time when you go shaving. If it's cold, it's hard to actually, a woman will not shave her legs when it's very cold, because you see the goosebumps, and the goosebumps actually, they're contraction of the erector pili muscle, and they hold the hair strong. So we developed a little project we started by applying alpha-1 agonist onto it, and we tried to see whether it will increase the epilatory force required to remove the hair, and also while you brush or while you pull it, and also how much hair was shed. And lo and behold, this idea actually, it's a very simple idea, but it works. We were able to reduce the shedding quite significantly in some patients. I think you can see it here is like 70-something% reduction. And the overall reduction is quite phenomenal. So this is just an example. Even when you brush the hair, if you do, this is a two-sided application, one is on the left and the right, you can see a big reduction, but there's quite a few papers we published on that. And I think the reason I'm bringing it up is not because of this particular idea, is that you can see that there's quite a new ways to innovate products that are still there, that are needed. I think today we have a lot of problems in hair medicine, but we don't have that many great solutions. But there's a lot of new innovative things that I think a lot of bright minds can come up with. And I think this is an open area to research. Another area area I'm actually actively working on is in gray hair. And I think that area, there's a lot to be wanted and tried in it. And I did only a small study on this. It's an idea that I had that kind of follows on work that I've collaborated with several researchers in vitiligo. But really, I think most of you know about gray hair, onset and age and everything. But as a proof of concept, this was actually, it says one male subject, we had two. They were quite gray, about 50%. And what we tried to do is what we do in vitiligo transplantation. We actually used suspension with the VitaCell kit. And what we do is we injected the suspension of melanin into the site. And what you find, this is one picture, that several weeks later, we did get additional pigmentation. So it's not maybe a technique that can be widely used commercially, but one thing that I did learn from it is that you could actually be able to transplant melanocytes and increase senescent gray hair. I think it's an interesting idea to think about and learn where this can lead for regrowing of hair, of gray hair, pigmented hair. So there are many ideas like that. And I think if you look in the literature, you'll find also quite a few new drugs that have caused adverse events of pigmentation, both in skin and hair. I think those might have some implications, both in vitiligo and in gray hair. So I think that's another area that's open. I think, in fact, this is the least research area. And one of the things is, over the years, people have always asked me about gray hair. And my answer was always, well, I don't know why you want to work on this project, because for €5, you can get some sort of hair dye and the problem is solved. Why would you want to develop a drug? But I think what I find is more and more these days is people want to stay away from what they call chemicals, dyes, drugs, and they want to do something more natural. So I think this is another area to really think about with hair, is natural stuff. And hopefully some of the lectures that you hear today, and this, by the way, some of this pigmentation that came back, some of the lectures that you'll hear today will be about how to use natural products, because I think there's quite a push for natural ingredients, natural products. And I'm not always sure they're better, but more safer. for that sense, but I think this is the consumer sentiment, so we have to somehow fall into what we can do to help our patients with that. So there's many developments, I think, coming. I think anywhere from JAK inhibitors to stem cells, but until our fate of being completely bald, I think there's a lot of great ideas in the future. And that was my son when he's small. He's not that small anymore, but that was in one of the AAD lectures. Thank you very much, everybody, and I hope we will have a great discussion and a great talk today.
Thanks, Andy. That was great. I mean, and again, for those that don't know Andy, he has been a pioneer in this hair world, and lots of interesting things. And I think if you can solve the problem of gray hair, I'm all in. So I just think it's one of those things that I think in my mind, having minoxidil and then finasteride and all these other drugs have been great for certain people in reducing the amount or trying to grow hair, stop hair for loss, grow hair. But I think the world of, gray and stuff, graying of hair, and I have a dog barking in the background. So, but I think the world of graying and darkening, being able to try to darken the hair is something that if you can figure it out, that's going to be fantastic. So thank you for that talk. Stick around. We're going to move on. We're going to move on to our next talk, which is Dr. Reshma Mallya is going to talk about QR678. And we appreciate their sponsorship of this webinar series. And I find this to be a fascinating compound for hair that I've learned about globally. For those of you in the United States, we do not have this product yet, but hopefully someday soon. But I've been following it for many years now as the development has continued. So without further ado, let's get started with the sponsored talk.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Reshma Mallya, marketing lead for QR678. I have more than 18 years of marketing experience in various healthcare and other companies like Google, Yahoo, Z Digital, and other healthcare digital therapeutic companies. Today, we are going to see how QR678 as a brand can be perfect partners to help you scale your hair practices. Let's see how. First of all, let's see what are the skill sets required to scale up aesthetic practices. First of all, you need deep knowledge and practical experience. Secondly, you should choose the right products and services that will work well for you and your patients. Thirdly, you need to know how to manage operations and training. You need to be a master at brand building and marketing. You need to smartly manage your practice and brand reputation. You need to be a pro at managing your finances, managing people and quality. And all this while managing your own sanity and your family, isn't it? Let's look at what are the specific challenges when it comes to scaling your aesthetic practices. You're bombarded with constant new products and new services all the time. Not only do you need to learn about them, you also need to train the others. You need to worry about the patient outcomes with those products and services. You should know how to market them. And on top of that, it's so difficult to get patient reviews, especially in aesthetics. We understand that. After all this, you need to worry about the ROI challenges, whether all the time and effort and money you're putting into all these new services and products are yielding any results, isn't it? On top of that, you need to deal with staff attrition. We get you. What happens as a result of all this is physician burnout. There's so much workload, there's so much administrative burden, there's so much decision making that it burns you out. 50% of dermatologists have experienced burnout symptoms like emotional exhaustion and depersonalization at some point in their lives. What happens to patient care then? It leads to lower job satisfaction, productivity, and higher medical error rates, leading to lower patient satisfaction. So how about making your life easier? Let's see an example of these two services for your hair practices. And I don't need to tell you anything. You'll see what I'm talking about.
back for this, like this, started with a gauze piece because the gauze piece will absorb the respected light in the running. Again, we go depth of 1.5 mm and deposit it.
So I don't need to tell you anything. The first process, as you can see, is still going on. There are multiple steps. It actually takes more than half an hour, the whole process. But in this video, they have actually just taken the highlights. And as you saw the other video, you guessed it right, it was QR678 Neo, right? It's just a 1 or 2 step process. There's nothing much to do in it. So making the right choice makes all the difference, right?
The back for this, like
So I just wanted to present to you how our products are always designed to help you scale. There is no capital expenditure. The risk is minimal, it is non-surgical. It's a highly versatile product. You can use it for multiple indications. It's a proven solution designed for outcomes. It is proven by research. It is 100% safe. It's almost painless. The patients will love you for it, especially if they've gone through PRP. It just takes 10 minutes. The patients are more compliant to the treatment because there's no pain and it's so fast. There's a better patient experience and you get a lot more good reviews for this. It is easy for your staff to convert and to prep. Yes. It's a wonderful product, and that's why we are now reaching out to around 1,500 doctors who are using it. We not only invest in products that are customer-centric, our whole DNA is customer-centric. Let's come to the Trichopreneur program. So this is an initiative which we have launched from QR678 to enhance your practices. What do we do in this? We help you with onboarding, we help you with training, we help you with marketing, and we collaborate deeply for your brand building and scaling up. What do we do? So you'll get a starter kit when you start off with us, which contains all the ready-made marketing materials for your practice. We profile your practice, we understand what your issues are, whether it is training, whether it is footfalls, whether it is creating an experience in your clinic, and we help you with all of that. We conduct a training for both the doctors and the staff so that the procedure is standardized and you're able to scale up. We also give you on-demand modules and certification. And once in a while, we give you refresher training if there's anything new. Coming to marketing and customer experience, we have a lot of marketing material which is ready, print as well as digital. We have templates for social media and WhatsApp and email. And if you want to conduct any camps or any events in your clinic, we have full support for that. When it comes to deeper collaboration for brand building, we have loyalty benefits for you. We have PR support, clinic branding support, we have social media collaboration. So if you have any questions about this, if you want to reach out to us. Overall, our commitment is effective, safe, convenient aesthetic products designed for you to scale your practice and delight your patients without burning yourself out. And last but not the least, you can become our superheroes. This is another initiative that we have launched recently, where we want doctors to create awareness among patients that hair loss is a serious business and you need to come to doctors for your treatment earlier on. Lastly, all I can say is QR678 is not just a product, it's a system which is designed for you to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that intro and discussion of QR. We appreciate it very much. And so we're going to move into our panel discussion, which is our next thing that we're going to do. So before we Before we get started with that, I want to introduce our panel, right? And so give me 1 second here. And I want to get everything on my computer and my notes up. So we have 3 amazing panelists today. Vikram Bhatt, who is the founder and director of Enrich Salons, one of India's largest and most well-known salon chains, renowned for offering high-quality beauty and grooming services under his leadership. Mr. Bhatt has expanded its footprint across the major cities in India, becoming a trusted brand in the beauty and personal care industry. So welcome, Mr. Bhatt. We also have Mr. Sahil Gupta, the CEO of Bodycraft Clinics and Salon, one of India's largest integrated salon and clinic chains, which provide a unique blend of beauty, wellness, and medical aesthetic services. And then Mr. Siddhar Ranganathan, not going to pronounce it right, Ranganathan, ex-MD, APAC, Allergan, former managing director of Allergan's Asia Pacific region, where he played a key role in expanding the pharmaceutical company's presence and market share. I'm sure everybody knows of Allergan, but it benefited from Mr. Siddhar's amazing strategic leadership, particularly in driving growth in the APAC region, which obviously is a huge part of their business model. So welcome to our 3 panelists. I'll start with asking questions, and we sort of each one I have a couple questions, but then I'd love to open it up to discussions with everything for every one of you. So Mr. Sridhar, we'll start with you. How can industry collaborations between clinics, product manufacturers, researchers drive advancement in hair therapies and help doctors scale up their hair practices?
Thank you very much, Dr. Michael Gold. It's a great pleasure, pride, and honor to be sharing screen and stage with people like Mr. Vikram and Sahil. Sahil and I have worked very closely in the past. Hi, Sahil. And hi, Mr. Vikram. So, see, the more I look at deeply the hair-related clinics and treatment, I understand more and more that there is a need for the clinicians to collaborate more with the industry to understand what kind of research happens. And even as Dr. Goren was talking about, it's what the interest which was there very little in the past to what is happening to be a major topic in the current setup. And also there is an evolution related thing. It's becoming more and more dynamic, more and more evolving. And it is important for them to move away from what was the earlier standard of care to something which is relatively new, and how research and development can help come up with newer and newer products, something which is safe, which can help patients to get not only address their distress, but also look at the trust factor, right? Because that's something which is very important. So to me, that part has a strong aspect when it comes to collaboration between the clinicians and the industry. Because when people come in, they look for solutions which actually are backed by authentic trials, authentic studies, authentic reports. And when clinics and when entities like the Enrich and the Bodycraft can look at, and when they're actually depending on trustworthy materials, trustworthy companies, it really makes a huge difference for them to address the problems that what people come with and provide them with the best solution. So we've seen this upgradation happening from what was a different standard of care. It could be the minoxidils and PRP that will continue to be there, but they look for newer and newer ones that can help them address things much faster, that can help them give something which is much safer, which has got solid proofs, and thereby they're able to help them address the challenges that they're coming up with.
Good, thank you. So I'm going to ask as I said, ask everybody questions, but we can pipe in as you think. But I also want to please have you all. So you're the co-founder of a company called Helixon. I will pronounce it right, but you can tell me the right pronunciation, which seems very unique. So all 3 of you, I want you to also introduce your business and your business model, so everybody understands where you all come from. So Siddhar, tell us a little bit about your company, and then I'll ask one more question.
So I basically have a role in the government of India. So I'm a steering committee member of the Department of Biotechnology in the Ministry of Science and Technology. And as part of that, we have an initiative with the IIT Madras, which is the largest one of the largest academic institutions in the country, Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. So we have something called a Healthcare Technology Innovation Center. I am an associate of that. And we have co-founded a few companies which actually have technology solutions in healthcare. So Helixon is one of those companies. And I'm also associated with in companies in the aesthetics, and even I'm part of the advisory board for QR as well. So I have a 30-year experience in the healthcare business. That's my introduction.
Okay, great. And then based on your experience, what has been the biggest learnings in the hair regrowth market that you've seen, and how can we all apply them, right? It's the research is really important, but then having physicians and clinicians, actually be able to incorporate them is so big. And again, the other two may pipe in as well with that question, because it's, we struggle with this all day long. I'm a busy dermatologist. I see a lot of people every day when I'm in clinic. And it's okay. You have hair loss. Okay, I'm going to do ABC, but I'm really not thinking DEF yet, right? And how do I start and get my staff involved to help me here?
See, if you look at it, the hair treatment is a high engagement treatment. Unlike many other things, maybe if you look at in a clinic, there could be some treatments like the peels, microderms, and all that may not be that clinician high engagement thing. Whereas hair is something where you have a significantly high engagement in terms of eliminating the questions, the fears that people come with. And since there are large number of players, many of them are unorganized, it becomes important that the players who are actually organized are providing authentic stuff, which actually is backed by scientific material, which backed by research, which is backed by good amount of information that can go on to them, so that when they are treating, many a times what happens, they are already exposed to quite a few things and they don't know which one to trust and which one not to trust. And hence it becomes very critical for people who, the organized players, to actually have some kind of a backing which can help their staff, their ecosystem to provide the right information and also provide the right solutions. So thereby they are aware when they're taking what are the things that they can encounter, what are the things that they can expect, and thereby back it up with results, and have them in the long run with them in the journey, because these are not one-time solution, right? You need to have them continuously there, and we need to understand, and things are also evolving and changing, because compared to what was in the past year, people may have to intervene much earlier than what it was, and also look at multiple product usage. It's not just monotherapy, it could be a combination, it could be moving from one aspect to another. So there are many things which are there, and hence it is important for the collaboration, so that these people are armed well to give the best solution, create that kind of an awareness, and in the long run have a significantly mutually beneficial journey, I should say.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to move to Mr. Gupta. All right, so again, I want you to introduce your clinic and at your clinics and what you all do and so forth. Why don't we start with that, and then I'll come back with a question for you. So tell us a little bit about what you run.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us here, Dr. Gold. So we run an interesting hybrid model, which is a salon and a clinic combined. This might seem, funny to certain people, but I think over the years we've been able to build a slightly unique space for ourselves. So we operate salons and clinics in adjacent properties, and essentially the Bodycraft hybrid model's promise is that we create a very rich cross-pollination environment where someone who's coming to the salon for certain needs is able to move to the other end of the spectrum in terms of needs which the salon cannot fulfill and are more clinical or aesthetic in nature. So we've been at this, hybrid model for the past 7 years. We operate about 20 locations, which is about 40 stores across India. And yeah, I think, like I said, our promise to the customer is that you get everything under one roof. So we're a one-stop shop for all your needs.
I don't think
beauty,
that, I don't think
wellness,
that's
aesthetic.
funny at all. I think it's a smart business move, right?
Well, yes,
So
yeah,
I mean, I mean, obviously, as a dermatologist that does general dermatology and aesthetic medicine, you know, as I said, I see a lot of general dermatology patients who then go,
sure.
well, I didn't realize, even after 35 years, I didn't realize you did this procedure, or I didn't realize you offer this,
Mm-hmm,
you know,
mm-hmm.
procedure. And I'm like, where have you been for all this time? You've been coming to my office. So you know, those are people, right? Who, if the need is there and it's done professionally and
Yeah,
appropriately, that's an audience waiting to go to the other side, right? And
absolutely, yeah.
I think that's ingenious, right? That's a great way to scale up an aesthetic hair type of practice. So what are the most effective strategies for clinics or salons to differentiate their hair growth treatments, ensuring both patient satisfaction and business growth? I think a lot of that goes on your business model, but
Sure.
what other strengths and how do you differentiate even with that model, you know, one group versus another group, which I think is really hard globally, because, you know, what makes my hair center, I have a hair center within my practice, but how does that separate and different, how do I differentiate that from, you know, somebody down the street that just, you know, dabbles in this or wants to be a
Sure.
part of what I do?
Well, I mean, you know, there could be a number of things that we speak of over here, but what really stands out is the patient experience and the patient outcome, right? Um, there's nothing novel about it, but it's something that you have to work really hard at. So I would say, especially in a market like India, the patient journey, you know, starts at a very nascent kind of discovery stage because consumer awareness is not. I think we're still going up the curve on that. So when someone seeks a particular solution right now, they could find you on the internet. It could be a word of mouth or whatever else. I think the journey begins with them starting to discover you on, let's say, your website, right, or by visiting your store. And nurturing the patient through the entire journey would clearly differentiate your practice, right? Which means you have to set touch points and work on all of them. Also, be really sensitive to the patient's needs because I think this is a self-esteem issue. There's also price points involved. So there's a spectrum of services that you could put out there on offer, but be sensitive to, you know, possibly the severity of the condition or the indication. Also, you know, some patients are skeptical about uh, minimally invasive stuff. Some people are very skeptical about, you know, restoration treatments which are surgical in nature. So you need to kind of take them through the journey. It's important to set realistic measures for success and help them understand, you know, what degree of outcome you'll be able to provide them with. Alongside of that, I think everything that happens thereafter, which is follow up, is also critical. So I would say it's a closed kind of feedback loop for someone who finds you and then goes through the entire process, builds conviction in your practice, in your doctor, and then you have to clearly keep delivering on results. So nothing new there. It's just something that you constantly keep working hard on, and that sets your practice aside because then people speak about it, and you know, word of mouth is the strongest indicator for someone else to come to your business. We discovered that almost 80% of our people, you know, the new patients are coming through word of mouth, even though you could be doing all kinds of stuff, you know, on the marketing front.
Word of mouth is the best, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Patient referring other clients to us is always my favorite. Yeah, I think
yeah,
it's important, and we'll talk about the journey, right? Hair growth is a journey. It's not, I
yeah,
mean, again, as those of us that actually do this every day, my patients are always, you know, I get them started on a treatment. I've explained to them this is a process. It's going to take time. I cannot regrow your hair in a day. And then, you know, 3 months, 4 months go by and they come back and they say, well, what you gave me didn't work. And
hmm,
I'm like, well, how long did you use it? Well, I did it for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and nothing came back. And,
yeah,
you know, I'm like, okay, that's not part of the journey. And so I want to address, I'm going to go to Mr. Bott for a minute, but I want to come back to people out there searching the internet and how the internet has played a role in things that we know don't work, right? Or that magic science that they think they have. Like I said, patients think they can grow hair in a day. So we'll come back to that. So, Mr. Bhatt, where do you see the largest need gaps in the hair market therapies, and where does industry need to innovate the most to meet our patients' needs? And which segment does your company generate? This is a tough one. Which segment does your company generate maximum revenue? So tell us first about Enrich Salons, and then we can break down the questions.
Sure. So, Enrich is a couple of decades old setup. We are into beauty care services, which are including hair, skin, nail services. So for me, being on the cure side, we are learning that business. We are getting there, and whatever interesting things which were presented today are quite amazing to know. Because if I think about our business, since it's a care business, the customer would first come to us. But having said that, there is a amount of trust what we build with the customer with our services in hair and skin, and slowly we can get them to the cure, and that's where the opportunity of cure comes in. Today, with I think affordability is not the issue. Awareness is still getting there, and then what is more interesting is to know that there is slowly acceptance is happening. So if today someone wants to go for hair transplant or infusion or anything, it's not new thing, it's not strange, and that's where the business is going towards. And then we at a scale can bring in more and more customers into the business. We can make our customers get more and more solution in the business. What is getting innovating? I think we all know, that there are reversal of aging happening or prolonging of hair happening. We know there are regrowth solution happening, and they are becoming better and better day by day. Even hair transplant is becoming so common in the ecosystem we are living in. But I think the next innovation would be where we can bring in some creativity along with the cure what we're offering to the customer, right? Because people now know that, okay, I'm going to get this solution. But I think maybe this is the time where we need to start thinking that after that cure, I was into care business, now I'm getting into cure business. But after giving the cure, what kind of trend, what kind of creativity I can bring it to those hairs, because ultimately the most noticeable part in our body is hair, right? So how can we make it to the tune where people feel, oh, I'm still fashionable, I'm still into trend, and then what I'm doing currently to cure my problem is not just the functional, it's not just the solution, but it is adding to my overall personality as well.
Great, thank you. And again, I think I'm going to ask all of you this next question. As you said, it's a journey and it's a process, and with hair especially, and Andy, if you're here if you can pipe in if you think you need to, genetics and aging and stuff still happens, and so the journey never ends, right? And so once you get the patient or client to grow hair, you can't stop, right? Whatever you're doing, you have to have some sort of maintenance process in place. And so Andy, what do you tell your patients? I know you're on. So
I think, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's exactly that. It's a journey that doesn't end, right? We're not changing our genetics. So barring some genetic therapy that will come, it's something for life. And I think this is the important take that I've heard a lot of it here. And I think Dr. Gold said that the same thing is the patient's expectations don't always match the reality in terms of their treatment timeline. And a classic case of it that I tell a lot of my students is that I had a patient that asked me for treatment, and he would have responded very well to finasteride, in my opinion. Gave him finasteride, run into him, and I told him, visit me in like 3 months, and we can talk again how it's going. I run into him like a month and a half later, some restaurant, and I asked him, so how's it going? He said, well, I had a sexual adverse event. I said, well, how often did you use it? One time. So he took one pill and he had a sexual adverse event of finasteride. And that's really what we're finding. And I think that this is the issue. I've been involved with also a lot of clinics and hospitals, and it's the same thing over and over again. And actually, if you talk to the people who develop minoxidil, Upjohn and Rogaine and all the other companies, including Dr. Reddy, the biggest challenge they have, 80% of patients drop minoxidil after 1 month. They don't want to continue because they don't see hair growth. And it's kind of like, okay, and unless they see huge hair growth, they're not going, and nobody sees it in 1 month. So they're thinking, why am I putting on my head every day? In fact, I might even shed a little more in the beginning, and there's no response. And I think this is the biggest challenge, how to convey to patients that they need to stay with the program for at least 6 months, I would say. I know everybody's trying to rush it now for the 3 months mark, but it's not realistic. It's just not. I mean, realistically, is somewhere closer to 9 months, probably you'll see a good result, but even 6 months is acceptable. And I think this is, I do see a better response when a patient really get with a physician rather than some of the clinics that are having a hard time retaining the client, because another clinic will tell them, hey, we can grow your hair very quick. We will do something in 30 days. Look how it looks. And so it's a big challenge from a commercial perspective compared to if you go to like a university hospital where there's no like competition. But on the commercial side, to open your own clinic, it's quite difficult because the patients have some unrealistic expectation. And if you don't meet them, they're going to the competitor, which you will never meet them either. But it's very difficult to convey that. And I think that's the challenge that I see.
Yeah, I agree there. So here's the Michael Gold take on how I approach a new patient when I do the minoxidil or finasteride or whatever. I actually will tell them, especially the younger people, you need to do whatever we tell you or recommend for at least 6 months. I think that's the minimum. And then I sort of put an analogy to it, because then it's 6 months, and if it works, you're going to be on it for forever, basically, or until something else comes out. And my analogy is brushing your teeth. Why do we brush our teeth every day, right? The dentist told us when we were young, if we brush our teeth every day, we might and probably will prevent most cavities. And then once we realize as we use toothpaste and brush our teeth, we don't get a lot of cavities anymore. I tell them it's the same thing. It's something you're going to do every day. So if you grow hair and if you can show the patient that it's actually working at 6 months, then it becomes pretty simple for them to continue because they see that result versus a 30-day, that it's obviously not going to work, right?
We have one more challenge that I find with a lot of patients. We're not always successful at growing hair. It's just a fact. I mean, sometimes we just can't grow hair, but we can maintain it probably better than we can regrow it. And I find that even the more challenging, and I think this is a problem that happened with Propecia when it was launched in the market, is that, yes, it works very well, actually, especially in men, in retaining your hair. But patients have this mentality, and I make an analogy with this, is if I told you, Dr. Gold, are going to go every day to the gym for the rest of your life, but you will not change from where you are. It's like, why would I go to the gym? Even though you might, if you don't go to the gym, you might get fatter and, you will not be in good shape and your bone, that's it. But you're not going to go because you're not going to see a better improvement. And I think that is the real challenge. If I tell a patient, hey, you're not going to lose any more hair, but you have to take it for the rest of your life, I'm like, why am I going to do that?
Right. I agree. All right. Next question for all three of our panelists. And then Andy, you can pipe in too. What do you think, or what are the most significant global trends that we are seeing in the hair regrowth market today? So if you had to pick one or two things, and you can say the same answers, it's okay. What do you think are the global trends that we're looking at the best? So Sidor, you want to go ahead, Seth?
We see significant offtake for minimally invasive procedures. I think the QR678 demo just before this was is very true for our practice. So we introduced this a while ago, and along with GFC, that's the largest kind of contributor to the hair side of our business in terms of hair regrowth. We see it growing at about 35-40 odd %, year on year. And that's a very strong, indicator and trend for us that people are subscribing to minimally invasive procedures along with everything else that is oral or topical. And I think for the Indian market and possibly the global market as well, hair transplants are becoming a lot more acceptable. People speak of it, without being shy about it. They're fairly curious. However, we see that pricing is becoming a constant, kind of challenge and barrier over there. So in the market, prices are getting slashed every day. There's a lot of, competition out there, which is doing transplants for much lesser than what it was earlier. So I think that's another thing that is fairly prevalent. But yes, there's very large, audience for hair transplants, at least in a market like India. And I think the latest that I've heard is AI-driven hair transplants. So that's something that that we hear is really popular in the West, and we're waiting for that to hit the Indian market as well.
I have a robot that basically
Yeah.
can do everything, right?
Yeah,
that's
so we're
what
waiting
we
for
use.
that. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Bott, what do you think? What's your greatest trend? You're on mute. Yeah, you're on mute.
So I was on mute.
There you go.
Okay, just add to what Sahil shared is that now is the trend where people are moving from hair systems, which used to be an external solution, a quick solution, less maintenance. But now people are trying for more hair transplant because it looks more natural. It is no doubt painful. It is no doubt little longer process, but preference, given a choice, preference is moving to more hair transplant. And as we said that the solution on the regrowth, the solution on the reversal of age, that is increasing. In fact, in our business, I forgot to mention in your first thing that almost 2/3 of our business happens in hair, and within hair, almost 30% business is driven from treatments and the solution which customers are asking from us.
Good. And
Yeah.
Sudhar?
See, we do notice that more and more youngsters are actually focusing and seeking hair intervention or hair treatment compared to what it was in the past. And the awareness is increasing, especially familial things, right? Suppose if somebody is already, if the parents have it, and even people who are 20s are actually looking at kind of intervention, these are getting accepted now. So which means early interventions have a good scope. Rather than, I mean, maybe you can call it the care instead of a cure, there is a good scope for these kind of things to work very well. And that's where the services, what is provided, whether it is the medical side or the consulting side, with whatever happens in the salons or in the clinic, make huge difference. A classical example I've seen with Bodycraft is the kind of medical insights they have, the kind of scale that they have done when they've brought in the medical treatment and upgrading, upskilling themselves with the latest of the treatments, supporting with science backing, and all these things give confidence to the user to accept whatever solutions are provided. So that way, I think these are very important. Early intervention, increased awareness, expertise in using, and then the right trustworthy products which are efficacious, safe, and cost effective. Maybe I would not say price is an important thing, but value for money, not just session treatment, but the whole treatment as such, long term, as to how does it make sense, rather than just going with the cheapest one, rather looking at something which can in the long run be more productive and effective.
Yeah, I do think cost is a major thing because again, I in my clinic we take you from the topicals all the way to hair transplants, and hair transplants here are expensive. But that's the journey and so forth. So there is a question. We're going to sort of jump. There's at least one audience question that I have, so it's really to Andy, but it could be for everybody. Anti-graying therapies, right? That's huge. So Andy, can you tell us a little bit more about, are we ever going to see this commercially, or how does that might work?
Yes. So are we going to see it commercially? I'm not sure 100%, but from lab to bench is a long road. But I am actually working with my group on one treatment that seemed quite interesting. We're able to change some of the melanin composition back with a topical at this point. It's still in very early stages of trials. We've done a small series of patients with that. I think there's a couple other groups that have been delving around with different. I think a good way to look at it, and if you're in the research side of things, is look at adverse events of drugs that are on the market already that have some pigmentation change and see where that leads. Some of them are oncological drugs, or majority of them, but there are potential maybe for making small molecules out of them eventually that can be done topically. So we will see it in our lifetime. I'm not sure. But I think if you're worried right now, this is the one area in hair that we have a very good treatment. You can go to CVS and, okay, maybe with the inflation now it's $10, you can get a hair dye. So I think until we have a treatment that actually reverses it naturally, we do have, some sort of solution for our patients with that one. I did want to say one thing about the future, or the near future. What's really missing in the drug space and pharmacological treatment is injectables. Real injectable drugs, not all sorts of mixes and treatments and stuff, and primarily in females, because even if we have drugs today, they work in females. And one example is obviously topical minoxidil. It works on some amount of females regrow hair or maintain their hair. The issue we have with these females is they don't like the product because it has poor cosmetic properties. And we have to always remember that whatever we do with these women for growing hair, the first thing is it's a cosmetic problem we're trying to fix. And we cannot make it worse. We cannot make their hair unmanageable, and we cannot make it that it's completely dry or frizzy or doesn't match them or strip their color. So these are the issues that we really have to handle when we develop drugs. And I think injectables solve that problem. And it's too early because we don't really have an injectable today for hair regrowth. And I think that's really the future of treatments, at least in women.
I agree with that. And so again, just for context purposes, right? QR, which I love, we can't use in the US because if we inject QR, it is a drug. And so anything that changes the structure and function of the skin, or hair in this case, would have to go through the FDA pathway of filing a new drug application and going through the whole regulatory process. And so we're limited greatly in not having anything like what QR can do. And these biomimetic peptides definitely seem to have a role. And again, I've seen all the publications that have been done on this. Also important to note, like when we use things like exosomes topically here in the US, they can be human-based, right? That may change at some point in lifetimes. Most of the companies that make exosomes now are looking at plant or synthetic exosomes or things like that. But outside the US, in many countries, human-based products are not allowed. So that is also a limit. But again, they can inject certain things that we can't inject, in the US. So I just want to bring that up as something that we got to be careful. But I do agree with Andy. If we can ever develop a drug that can do this, I think that's going to be great. So a couple more questions for the whole panel. You want to say something, Rashma? Yeah, go ahead, please.
I'm happy to share that the QR team is working on a clinical trial for an anti-graying solution. So, yeah.
Good. We need that.
And
again, I think
people like me can be significant beneficiary of that, because I'm sure Vikram Bhatt also will endorse that. And I'm one person, I keep jokingly telling the stylist is the first person who expects me to keep dying every time.
Yeah, and again, I think it's, if we have the solution that we can do a needling procedure or something to help it get in, even though that sort of is the gray area in my world with FDA, because it still changes the structure and function of the skin. But if we can get something that works, then that's great. So many products are available in the market. How do we pick? How do we recommend? What do you tell people about, patients as well as the business model? And we may have covered a little of this, but how do you go about in your clinics or in your practice or when you're talking to clinicians, how do you figure what works and what doesn't work? I mean, again, it's like, to me, that it's not voodoo practice, but I show a picture of in one of my hair talks where I have like 80 products that I found on Google or one of the search engines, and the reality is none of them work. They have no science, they have no nothing. So how do you do this? How do you tell your patients? How do you tell your clients what they should use? And we can go around the room. So why don't we start with Vikram? Why don't you
Yeah,
start? So he'll go in after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in my case, in our case, what we really do is before we uh, advise or promise customer a solution, we want to get underwriting and assurance from the product partner, because if the product is going to be great, that confidence we need to get first ourselves, and then we need to bring it to the customer. And so our simple tagline is that 100% refund guaranteed if we don't live up to your expectations. Now, if my product partner is underwriting this commitment from our side, then we are good to go. So all our technical assessments, everything starts only after getting that confidence from the product partner, so that we are more confident in front of customers, because ours is a very relationship business. My customer is going to come to me every 6 weeks, 8 weeks, so that trust factor is high. So I cannot recommend any product which does not live up to his promise.
Great.
Yeah, I'm
Sahil,
in
what do you
agreement with
think?
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same. I think there's a whole phase where you understand the product line, the architecture, the R&D behind it, and then there's enough testing that happens before we introduce it. And all of this has to be a collaborative process. I mean, the product partner has to work with us because we're talking about educating people at scale, testing this out, building the entire journey for the customer, alongside of it. So yeah, pretty much that. And we try to keep the portfolio, sharp. So not bring in everything, that's out there, work at scale, but also keep it very sharp and focused in terms of who we're working with.
And then Sridhar?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, the biggest requirement is the trust, right? Because when people come for such treatments, they look for something where they can trust. They already have, I keep telling people saying that they already come with a distress. You don't add distrust to it, right? So how do you basically bring in the trust factor? And if you have to work backwards on that, you look at solutions that are approved, that have the necessary approvals from all the bodies which are there, where you actually have some global usage, tried across various types of patients, and then having publications which are supported, peer-reviewed journals and all. If it is published, then these things give authenticity to talk to people, whether it is the medical person or the staff in the clinic. They become more authentic when they are communicating this, and thereby they are able to promise what results can actually be delivered, and you may be able to deliver that as well. Because in a situation where there are a plethora of things that are available, picking up the most one with the most backing helps you provide closer results, and you can promise and then deliver what you promise. And that's where this becomes very important.
Yeah, I mean, in my world of I'm a device guy, right? So I love lasers and energy-based devices, and I have people come to me all the time. I have something that's going to grow hair, right? This definitely works. And the first thing I actually say to them, show me the publication, a publication that it works, right? And then I want to know who did that, who was the person on the publication, and then and make sure that they're sort of an expert in what they're talking about, no matter if it's hair or something else. And then a lot of times companies, and this is for everybody out there that's in industry, we have white papers, right? And I think white papers are really good to show people that you've done something, but a white paper isn't a published paper. And it hasn't gone through the peer review process. I edit now 3 journals in dermatology, so it's really important to me that everything goes through this whole peer review process, especially with new therapies and new concepts and ideas. So I think that's really important. All right, we have one more question that I want to get to. And again, everybody can address this, and Andy, please pipe in if you need to. It has to do with how do you address hormonal causes of hair loss, especially in women around the menopausal age group, because again, there's so many products. I think we've covered a lot of this, but do you do anything different in that with female pattern or hormonal hair loss in that menopausal group. So go ahead, Sahil, you first.
Well, I think I'll just have to defer to both of you. This is
Okay,
not
this
my
is more
specialty,
medical.
right?
So,
But
all
my
right,
wife is the dermatologist. She'd be she'd be
Andy,
better suited to answer.
Andy,
but
get
she's
off
not here.
mute for a minute and help us with this question
Yeah,
again.
no,
with
I think it's a very good question, and I think in women, it's more difficult to diagnose the exact cause of hair loss. But one thing we do notice at that period in time goes more to potentially what I would call pre-female pattern hair loss in a lot of women, which is a telogen effluvium of some sort. And we have seen that probably 60 to 80%, we don't have exact numbers, but women who develop female pattern hair loss go to some stage of telogen effluvium rather than just having slowly hair loss and some pattern. And I think when there are these changes in hormones, that's when you are more likely to have that. And I think this goes for a lot of things I've kind of observed. I don't have real studies for it or any published papers on it, but I think it's a lot of times, even when we think about men, the conjure is that high levels of DHT in men who are genetically predisposed develop hair loss. Same in women, but I'm not sure this is true. I think it's the change in the hormones is what actually causes or triggers these body changes. And you can think about it kind of as a shock to the system, just like if you have surgery and you have hair loss. It's a similar thing, I think, as you go to these hormonal changes in women. And, there's not a lot of great papers about HRT in women and hair loss improvement necessarily, but for telogen effluvium, there are some, I think. And I think that in general, when we manage these women, we manage their hormones first and hair probably second. But I think using products to reduce the shedding that they have are key, and then see how their hormone balances over time.
Right. All right. So,
Gold, I have a question for you. Maybe I'm
Sure.
asking on behalf of the doctors in India, considering the profile of products that we have. There are many doctors who still have this question in mind with PRPs and all being there. When would be the right stage for them to move to something like QR? Is it okay for them to start with it, which is what we feel is the right thing? But still, that evolution takes time in some of those doctors, and there is a question in their mind saying, is it okay to start with QR instead of going to the PRPs and all that? Maybe you can.
I mean, I'll start with that one and then Andy finish. If I had QR in the US, I wouldn't do PRP.
Okay.
So again, it would be the next step, right? So anything that you don't, I mean, PRP involves it involves putting a needle in somebody's arm, drawing blood, getting it, spinning it, whatever. Being able to go to the closet and pulling out a vial, refrigerator, pulling out a vial, and if we have the efficacy that it's shown, with the studies that they've been able to do, and they have, if you don't know QR studies, there's plenty of them. I would opt for that. I mean, again, if I could inject exosomes here, I would do that before I would do PRP. So anything that I don't have to hurt anybody with a procedure and then do a second procedure. One of the things I'm working on here in the US is needleless PRP, right? How do you be able to use, pneumatic pressure therapy to get it in? Is the efficacy going to be the same and all that kind of stuff? So I'm looking at a group of people that way, but it's really hard. I mean, QR should be QR, or something like QR in my world should be topical. If you're dealing with a female and you do oral with, whatever you're doing, right? Anything that doesn't involve sticking somebody and drawing blood and then making another 50 sticks in somebody is what I like.
Yep.
Andy?
No pain, no gain.
Well, that's always that's always the concept, right? I mean, that's the hair transplant world, right? No pain, no gain.
I agree what you're saying. If we had something like QR, something like that around, that is a tool that we can inject and use, it will be superior to PRP. I'm not the biggest proponent of PRP. I still believe that the majority of what you see in PRP is really just the tissue damage that we cause. And I think you can see that if you do derma rolling or you do other techniques, you probably get just very close to those results. And so, and a lot of the data is kind of masked in multiple treatments used together, where they use minoxidil and finasteride and PRP. And yes, we know you want to combine all the modalities on a patient just in case, but I'm not sure which one, if you unravel them, really works together in combination. But I agree, if there was something like QR out there that was proven to be good, it would be absolutely incredible treatment.
Yeah. And
I had a
so
follow-up
that's
question.
wait, that's a note. That's a note to the QR people. We're waiting in the US to do all this research and stuff. So you got Dr. Goren, you got me. We're ready to go. Go ahead, Sahil.
Yeah, are you guys seeing anything that is IV-based solutioning for, if not hair regrowth, at least maintaining what you have? IV drips?
I don't. I mean, I don't do anything IV in my clinic. So,
Okay.
Andy, any thought?
I'm sorry, I missed that one. What was the question?
Are there any IV therapies that you might consider in the clinics?
Well, it depends. If you're trying to do something like an anti-androgen, you can inject it instead of orally take it. I mean, it's on the serum levels eventually are the same as what you would do, let's say, on a finasteride pill or one of those. You could achieve the same thing, but I think that all those get metabolized very quick. So you're not going to get an advantage because you're not going to inject daily. At least on
Right,
anti-androgens, they don't last that long in the body. So, you know, being steroids themselves. So I don't see that right now. I cannot think of one.
Okay.
Plus, I don't know patients want to be hooked and get IV stuff or injections all the time, unless there was something really long-term that you can do once every 3 months, 6 months.
Sure.
That I can see, but at the moment, nothing comes to mind.
Right.
Okay.
But it's a good one. If
All right. All right, so we're not at the end, but we're close to the end, and I just want to, and you know, we've heard some amazing comments. First, Andy, thank you so much for that great lecture. Sudhir, Vikram, and Sahil, thank you for all your great comments. I want to take the opportunity to thank Global Cosmetic Surgery for the opportunity to put these hair talks on. I think it's very educational. I want to thank the QR team for their sponsorship for this Global Cosmetic Surgery group of hair talks. We are going to have one, I think next month, is on AI and its role in the hair world. So again, another very interesting and important topic. But again, I can't thank everybody, the whole team here that's on the screen now, for participating today. So wherever you are in the world, have a great evening or a great morning. I know Vikram's in Las Vegas. Be careful out there. And again, I just want to say thank you, and everybody have a great rest of your day. And we're going to end the meeting now. Wait, before we do, Tanuj, you're on. Do you want to end? You want to end? Did Tanuj get back on? We'll give him one
I
sec
would like
see
to
if he-
thank, on behalf of Team QR, I would like to thank everyone for their time. We had some amazing insights, especially Dr. Andy Goren, you know, the kind of innovations that are happening, right? We are really excited to be working with all of you guys. And I mean, I want to see you in the next Hair Talks. Thank you.
Thank you,
Great.
everybody.
So
It was
again,
a real pleasure.
thank you, everybody. Everybody, thank you,
Thank you.
thank you. And we'll see you next month, okay? Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.